if I conclude that it could not have happened the way Constable Smythe said it did,
Yeah.
then I am inferring that Constable Smythe staged the scene.
We are inferring that the rendition offered by Constable, as I said, you asked Megan Dunphy early on what was her scenario.
Yeah.
I
asked you too, but you limited your comments to credibility. You held your cards close to your chest, okay?
I don't accept, for the reasons I've stated, I'm not going to go through them all again, I don't accept Officer Smythe's rendition of what happened in there. That may
so then the necessary inference, it would seem to me, from that is that Constable Smythe lied about what he said and, in fact, had staged the scene.
And
so that would be a finding of misconduct, which the law says, as I understand it, I should only draw when when I have
strong evidence,
something more than speculation or rumors or innuendo or guesses or unreliable evidence.
But this is not speculation, rumors, or unreliable evidence.
I know that, but is it enough? Is there any way that evidence can be enough to?
Can it be enough with all the other evidence you've heard? Can it be enough? I believe it can be enough. But you know,
what is all the other evidence I've heard that in any way would relate to the credibility of Constable Smythe's testimony?
You've heard his testimony.
The one aspect would be that Mr. Dunphy was not violent. Okay, so. Not in the past have not been shown to be
You will
violent.
determine whether you accept his reasons for going there. You will determine whether or not you accept the information.
Well, let's assume he didn't have good reasons for
that
going
goes for
there.
credibility then, doesn't it?
One second. If he didn't know, that might be just a disagreement in terms of what he believed was proper policing and those consequences and what someone else might conclude. There'll be experts called in this regard in terms of how investigations should be carried out and so forth.
Absolutely, and if you accept any of the cross-examination or what I believe are some inconsistencies in his evidence, if you accept that the scenario of, in light of the expert evidence, it would take these many seconds, if you accept that he's a trained police officer with significant expertise in these situations, whether that then, on a balance of probability or whatever level you feel is appropriate, determines that the evidence he is given just does not add up here.
When arguably there's nothing else to challenge the evidence, when we know that he's the only eyewitness and he has stated certain things,
and he's the only
and when
witness.
there doesn't appear to be any motivation or any reason why.
The motive is not something normally that we have to, make a ruling on with respect to Canadian laws. I understand it, but if indeed,
but just in terms of matter of common sense, why is a police officer going to go in and shoot a person in the head without having some reason?
Let me put one scenario to you.
Go ahead.
Okay, Officer Smythe goes down there. Officer Smythe knocks on the door. Mr. Dunphy invites him in. Mr. Dunphy has just come from the Woodstock, and he's got his friend coming up for a talk. So
he should be fairly laid back and calm.
Turkey. Got his buddy coming up. They're going to have a talk.
A good Easter Sunday morning.
He's going to hang back now and kick back and has. The officer comes. He has no particular issue with that. Comes in, and the first question the officer asks is, okay, same question he asked the other people. Do you have a firearm? Yeah, I got
okay, let's say that was done, and Mr. Dunphy honestly answered, yes, I do.
Hey, get it, William, bring it out. So we got that put to the side. So Dunphy goes and gets this old gun, which is probably behind the couch or on the floor.
Do you really think a police officer, even a rookie police officer, is going to permit an individual who's admitted to having a firearm to go and get it and bring it to him?
He may have said, where's it to? I'll get it. Point it out to me. It comes out, it's laid on the table. And a discussion takes place where things fall out.
And you think, so you're asking me then to infer that the rookie police officer, even a rookie police officer, okay, I'm just going to to the extreme here for, as you said, to make a point, that a police officer would leave a rifle firearm in that position?
He may find it probably was not in that position. It could have been in another position.
Which,
okay?
Such as?
Such as once Officer Smythe got it, it may have been laid on the chair, the couch. You're asking me to speculate.
I'm testing the inferences that might be drawn, or would have to be drawn in order to support one scenario or another. And you know, I'm doing this to test you to.
Okay, and
maybe we'll be coming back to this at the end of the case when there'll be further evidence at certain points, but not as far as this experiment is concerned. So.
Officer Smythe has the gun brought out, gets the gun out, lays it down. It's an old gun. You got any ammunition for it? And there's a couple or three bullets brought out. Okay, and then
remember, there's a bullet in the chamber.
When the police get
although the bolt action is not
right, the bolt action is not back, so it couldn't have been fired. And the stick that's normally on the right hand side, where he can grab it from, a conversation takes place.
You think that police officer is going to leave the individual in the chair that close to the stick, even though it's a reach away, and go over by the mantle?
That is no sloppier.
So what?
That is no sloppier than standing 5 feet back and letting the person be able to pull a rifle up from the floor and point it at you.
Well, we know what the consequences of that were, but
in
terms of trying to draw inferences from
the stick comes up.
What we're doing here now is you're putting a scenario forward, and I'm testing it with inferences that you're asking me to draw in that regard.
I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that scenario does not seem to be absolutely unbelievable. The stick comes up. That explains why it's on the wrong side of the chair. It's on the floor, on the left side, where he would never have it, where you got to walk in.
The stick comes up, and the firearm has already been left on the table.
The firearm is out on the table over here, somewhere away from where Officer Smythe has any. The stick comes up. The conversation goes bad. Dunphy uses the stick as he normally would. Now look, get out of my house, get out of my house. Something like that. Officer Smythe tells him, put the stick down. Things go from bad to worse there. That's how a firearm gets drawn. That's how the stick gets flicked on the other side of the desk or on the other side of the chair. I don't know if that's what happened, but
well, again, just questions I'd have on that, which we'll hear by the end of the evidence, is whether Constable Smythe would have felt so concerned about the stick as to conclude he had no choice but to use his firearm.
He may have been taken off guard, but the stick comes up, he pulls the firearm, as I look, drop it, as he's pulled the firearm before, never had to use it. In this case, the stick hits him in the hands, hits him on the wrist, something like that. I don't know, I wasn't there, but I do believe that, as Megan said, when you asked her, we don't accept Officer Smythe. I don't think that scenario.
Okay, I understand your point, but that is what I have to consider as well. The fact that sorry, go ahead.
I can't give you what happened. What happened in that room. What I can say is that our position is, you may not accept it, that Officer Smythe's rendition of how this gun came out in a man that's fairly laid back with an experienced police officer in a room that he's not more than 7 feet away from, 8 feet away from him, and it comes out such that even though I'm trying to de-escalate the situation with my file folder, it comes out and gets pointed at me, I think is patently unbelievable.
And what I'm going to have to look at, as I mentioned, the balancing of the evidence, and it seems to me that the question you're seeking to have the experiment address comes down to whether it was possible for, with all the evidence relating to the chair and so forth, let me word this. Whether the evidence that would be gathered
From the chair.
by the experiment would be sufficient to, in the whole context, or in the whole scenario, to enable sound conclusions to be drawn on the balance of probabilities.
But how,
And if the evidence is not sufficient, then arguably at the end of the day, the evidence will be consistent with Constable Smythe's version. If the evidence is no, then you have a situation where, no, sorry, the issue addressed by the experiment would be, could Donald Dunphy have brought up the rifle from the side of the chair quickly enough to prevent Constable Smythe from escaping the room? Was Constable Smythe left with no choice,
or
but to fire?
Or Donald Dunphy never ever had an intention of firing the rifle. The bolt is not up in a position by anybody's understanding.
Now, you're asking me to make a finding of misconduct by a police officer or against a police officer based on the assumption that when the gun is coming up and pointing at him.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is all of these things together lead to a requirement that we try and gather the best information we can to see if Officer Smythe's version is believable.
Let me go back again and see if I can work out the question that this evidence is going to be directed at. Could Mr. Dunphy have brought up the rifle from the side of the chair, for example, or from somewhere on the right-hand side, quickly enough to prevent Constable Smythe from escaping the room? Isn't that what's at the essence of it? If he could have brought it up quickly enough to prevent Constable Smythe from leaving, then that evidence supports Constable Smythe's position. But you're seeking to establish that he could not have brought it up quickly enough in order to show that then that is some evidence that is inconsistent with Constable Smythe's position, are you not?
Two positions, or 2 points. Number one, I'm attempting to show that the rifle could not have come up to the position that Officer Smythe says, in the manner he says, without him being aware of it and able to take evasive action other than shooting Mr. Dunphy. And secondly, that you can't get to the question of whether or not he could have got it up fast enough to shoot Officer Smythe, because he never ever had an intention of shooting Officer Smythe. He never ever brought the rifle up to begin with. You don't get to your second question in my scenario.
I'm missing it. I'm missing something there.
If indeed we're saying Officer Smythe's rendition is not the truth, not correct,
right,
that something else took place,
right,
and that indeed Mr. Dunphy never pulled the gun on him, that the gun was brought out in possibly one of the ways that we've spoke of.
Well, there's the problem I have there is just visualizing the different scenarios and whether it's a reasonable inference. You know, the police officer would have left the firearm close enough to be.
No, he didn't have to leave it close enough. The firearm could have been on the mantelpiece. The firearm could have been after the end of this, if things went wrong, and if the stick entered into it, and it was a lapse in judgment, if it was something that concerned, and that's how Mr. Dunphy got shot. The gun could have been placed there. What we're saying is you don't get.
He could have gone in, be told Mr. Dunphy, yes, I have a gun. It's over there behind the couch.
He gets it.
Constable Smythe goes over,
gets it out,
takes the firearm, and goes back away from the exit and leaves the firearm back by the mantel somewhere.
Leaves it somewhere. I don't know where. But what I'm saying,
well, so the furthest place away from
what I'm saying is,
Dunphy would have been by the mantel, arguably, or television or whatever.
I can tell by the look in your face you're saying that that's just not a believable
Well,
scenario.
that's the sort of thing that I'm going to have to consider, and I'm giving you a chance to show me why I'm wrong in considering it.
What I'm saying is, you can't come to the inference that Mr. Dunphy should have been able to get enough quick enough to shoot him, because we're maintaining Mr. Dunphy, who had no history of violence of this type, who indeed had nothing to make him particularly angry that day, who indeed had just come and was expecting a friend up, and the friend could have arrived right in the middle of this confrontation.
So he didn't. There was no pulling of the gun at all. That's your position there. So there's nothing to measure. No need to measure.
it is needed to measure to determine whether or not Officer Smythe's version stands up to logic, time, and scientific method.
Okay, okay, I have your, I think I
Anyway,
understand. If you have anything further to add, I think I understand what you're.
Do you understand where we're coming from,
What you're
Mr.
putting-
Commissioner?
And I do, the
consideration.
last question I had was how to tie all this in with the position of the stick, where the stick.
I believe the stick was on the right-hand side, and at the end of the confrontation ended up on the left-hand side. Okay. I don't believe it would be left lying in there, which runs counter to every piece of evidence we've had. All the evidence been consistent that it was on his right-hand side, against the wall or against the side of the chair. It's left out right in the walkway where you'd have to walk in. That seems.
So just one final point there in terms of helping me get to my scenarios that we may or may not have to consider if they're proven. The stick, lost my train of thought. Now just give me the stick ends up, yeah, in terms of Constable Smythe, if he has done what you're suggesting, which is that he, after the shooting, placed the firearm from where he had previously placed it.
Wherever it was previously.
Why would he have placed it with the barrel of the firearm pointing
Perhaps
towards Mr. Dunphy rather than towards where he was?
Perhaps we'll hear from Dr. Avis, and perhaps this is knowledge he's equipped with, I don't know, that if someone is shot with something in their hand, that could go any number of places. I mean, it may.
Yes, but if remember now, we're talking about, in your theory, Mr. Dunphy is not lifting a firearm.
No, he's not at all.
So Constable Smythe shoots him. The firearm is where Constable Smythe had put it after he found it behind the couch, and then he brings it over and places it. And my question there is, why would he place it in that direction? I can't answer why it would be placed in that angle. But that's the problem, you see, with putting up a scenario. You're trying to. My job, I think, has to be to find logical, complete inferences to go, to follow a particular path. And when I come to a bridge that's been blown up because there's no explanation, I can't keep following that path.
Maybe Constable Smythe believed that is the position a gun would likely have come in if someone was shot with it in their hands.
And if he had believed that, just to follow on in that same scenario, why would he have left these deciding whether or not this evidence is of your engineer is going to help me to any significant degree? Go ahead.
I don't know what took place now.
Right.
I don't accept Officer Smythe's rendition for a whole lot of logical reasons with respect to stick placement, gun never seen before, Mr. Dunphy not being in a bad mood, invites him in, is going to take on an armed police officer that he's just met, who's in far better shape than he is. He's going to try and do this from seated in a chair. All of those things cry out for, this just doesn't fit right. And then on top of that, you have to factor in that this trained police officer, whose duty it is to protect, somehow, in this size of a room, let this scenario go down so that his only option was to shoot the man. I think that, with the greatest respect, is a very difficult set of circumstances to accept as what could have happened there.
Thank you.